Freelance left the State Harbor at Mackinaw City and headed east into Lake Huron. Yesterday, Vicky and I had sailed from St. James to the Straits of Mackinac and under the very impressive 5-mile-long bridge, and we are now continuing our route back to Lake Superior's Apostle Islands. The Straits are a super popular tourist destination where the historic Mackinac Island is its main attraction. The charming resort island is serviced by 2 busy ferry lines and is especially known for its fudge and 125-year-old ban on motor vehicles. We know the island well, having stayed at its marina many times. This time, we regrettably had to pass it by.
Isn't that a cute lighthouse on Rhode Island? I think it was Tim who said that he would love to spend the summer on that lighthouse if it was fixed up as a bed and breakfast. You have to admit that that's a pretty cool place.
Actually, the whole area is way cool, and you've got to visit here. People come from far away to see it. Some even come by cruise ship. For decades, there weren't any cruise ships left on the Great Lakes. Times have changed, and there are now 6 cruise lines taking tourists to amazing Great Lakes places and cities.
Notice he's flying the Norwegian flag. Good to see somebody from Scandinavia here.
On this particular day, there were 2 of the Viking Line ships on the roads off of Mackinac Island. I am sure going by cruise ship is a wonderful way to see any of the Great Lakes. I would rather do it in my own sailboat. There are 40 nautical miles across Lake Huron from the Straits State Harbor to the Detour Marina at the mouth of St. Mary's River. If we could maintain a cruising speed of 6.5 knots, it should be an easy 7-hour day. The weather forecast was for north winds at 10 to 15 knots. It was a little on the light side, but should provide us with a very comfortable reach with all 3 sails flying. The height of the sea state was surprising. We were consistently seeing 4 to 5 foot swells, which seemed high for the conditions. It wasn't anything for us to worry about. It just wasn't expected. Three powerboats passed us at 1 o'clock. It really was a perfect day for a powerboat run. The winds had dropped down to about 10 knots and the waves had diminished as well. With our jib topsail drawing less and less and Freelance's boat speed increasingly leaving a lot to be desired, it was time for us to roll up the jib topsail and motor sail with the main and staysail. We were now back to doing 6.5 knots and again making good progress towards the mouth of the St. Mary's River. There were rain clouds forming behind us and to the north. From the look of the clouds, I expected a squall or two would eventually catch up with us, but for the time being, we were still enjoying large patches of blue skies. The wind unfortunately decreased further, getting down to just 7 knots. The South Sea swells remained unchanged. At 13:30, the steamship Arthur M. Anderson appeared on the horizon. That freighter is legendary. It was following close behind the Edmund Fitzgerald when that 729-foot ship wrecked on Lake Superior back in 1975 with the loss of everyone aboard. That tragedy happened 15 miles northeast of Whitefish Point in a hurricane-like November storm. It has been memorialized in Gordon Lightfoot's haunting song, The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. If you haven't listened to the song, you really should. It's amazing. It's one of Lightfoot's best. Soon after the Anderson had passed us, Freelance got to our route's next waypoint. Our GPS asked for the course correction to be accepted, and Hal, our autopilot, headed us directly towards the mouth of the St. Mary's River. It was also about time to take down the staysail. It wasn't doing us any good anymore, and we could see some isolated rain squalls were coming our way. I released the staysail halyard and asked Vicky to tighten up the sheet. I am a big fan of the boom and how it makes the staysail self-tacking, but you really don't want to have it flop around and hit you while you're working on the foredeck. The trick is to tighten down the boom with the sheet so it doesn't move. It always works like a charm. Next, I tied off the halyard and did the usual routine with flaking the staysail along the boom. Actually, getting the staysail put away was none too soon. The rain squalls caught up with us when I was finishing putting the sail cover on. But we weren't done. The Great Lakes should never be taken for granted, and just like on the ocean, squalls can pack quite a punch on the lakes. So since it was just Vicky and I on board Freelance, we decided it would be best for us to take the main down now. Besides that, the rule is to always reduce sail when you first think about it, and that rule has saved us a lot of trouble. Of course, instead of striking the main, we could have reefed it down. With Freelance's handy jiffy reefing system, it's the same effort. However, we were getting quite close to the mouth of the St. Mary's where we would have to take it down anyway. By taking it down now, we were done with it while we were still in open waters. You could call it pressing the easy button.
Well, you managed not to get too wet. Did you see the lighthouse?
The Detour Reef Lighthouse marks the southern entrance to the St. Mary's River. As I mentioned in another episode, I strongly suspect this lighthouse type is modeled after the Roman lighthouse at Alexandria, which was one of the wonders of the ancient world. An earthquake destroyed that one, but smaller copies were built. Some are still standing in Spain and Portugal. Regardless of its history, it's definitely a time-tested, functional design, but not what I would call beautiful. However, there's much to be said for form follows function. The squalls had more or less passed us by this time, and it was now time for me to get our teardrop-shaped fenders ready on deck. We have found that these large fenders are essential for protecting Freelance's cheek cap rail from the repeated damage that was previously caused by the vertical dock posts that are so common in Michigan. We were on the final approach to the Detour State Harbor, which was our destination for the day. The marina has 80 slips, with more than half of them set aside for transients. It primarily serves as a stopover for recreational boats coming and going from the beautiful North Channel of Lake Huron, as well as those transient the St. Mary's River. It's been our experience that the marina is rarely full, but we did, of course, call ahead for dock reservations. It's always the best thing to do. The ferry between the Detour Village and Drummond Island passed ahead of Freelance. By the way, Drummond Island is supposed to be the second largest freshwater island in the U.S. The Detour State Harbor is another marina that we have often stayed at. It's a well-protected modern facility in a very convenient location. The small town of Detour is nice to visit, and in the past we have often used the marina's loaner bicycles to check it out. We wouldn't be doing that this time. The weather had passed by morning, leaving the marina as calm as could be. We were prepared for the day's run up the river to Kemp Marina at Sault Ste. Marie. However, before leaving, we had to visit the marina's fuel dock to take on diesel. The last time we did that was back at Fish Creek in Lake Michigan's Green Bay. Freelance has a 50-gallon tank, and we burn less than a gallon per hour at cruising speed. So we have about a 350 nautical mile range on the power alone.
That motorboat, Vicky. Yeah. That's another GLCC boat.
The one that just went out recording?
Yeah, the one that just went out.
It's always nice to see other members of the Great Lakes Cruising Club out on the water. The St. Mary's River connects Lake Superior with Lake Huron. It's a very busy freighter route with a controlling depth of 27 feet in the channel. The depth outside the channel can be just a few feet, so unless you have local knowledge, it's always best to stay well within its edges. For most of the way, the channel closely follows the international border between the United States and Canada. Our route up the river today, along the purple line that you see here, is about 39 nautical miles. We hope to be at Kemp Marina at Sault Ste. Marie between 5 and 6 p.m. We were again rolling on the St. Mary's River. It's usually a motorboat trip for us, especially when going upstream. The current in the river is definitely noticeable, but is often moderate. In some of St. Mary's constricted channels, it can run more than 2 knots. That's enough to speed up a descent or slow down an ascent. It's also enough to mess with your fuel estimate. Years ago, I came up to St. Mary's on somebody else's boat when we ran out of fuel just shy of Bellevue Marina at Sault Ste. Marie. While at anchor, in the dock of course, we poured 6 gallons of diesel from a jerry can into the tank. That should have been the end of it. Unfortunately, the accumulated crud from the bottom of the tank had been sucked into the fuel filter. It was a real mess. It took effort by the skipper to clear the Raycor filter before we eventually got the engine going again. At about 11, we closed in on the old freighter refueling station at Lime Island, which is now a state recreational area. It has a public dock, campsites, cottages, and trails. It's supposed to be an interesting place to put in, and is also a popular place from which to watch the passing freighters and other boat traffic on the river. We have never stopped in there, and again passed it by. Next up to port was Round Island with its picturesque lighthouse. It was here we started to see some freighter traffic on the river. We spotted what looked like a salty coming up astern. On the Great Lakes, ocean-going commercial vessels are commonly referred to as salties, and the freighters that stay on the lakes are called lakers. The one that gained on us sure looked like a salty. It was a Canadian ship called the Evans Spirit. The salties come into the Great Lakes from the Atlantic Ocean through the St. Lawrence Seaway. The size limitation is a Welland Canal, which bypasses the famous Niagara Falls. The Welland's 8 locks are 766 feet long and 80 feet wide. and they raise and lower the ships 328 feet or 100 meters. That is the difference between Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. Incidentally, if a salty fits in the Welland locks, it will also fit in the larger locks that connect Lake Huron with Lake Superior at Sault Ste. Marie. The ship that was coming downbound against us was a Federal Dart, a true salty registered in the Marshall Islands in the Pacific Ocean. You really see all kinds of ships from all kinds of nations on the Great Lakes. The channel in the St. Mary's River is generally wide enough to allow two freighters to pass each other, so there's usually plenty of space for a recreational boat to share the channel with a freighter. Of course, you are very close up when you meet them. At first, it can be quite uncomfortable, but it's something you quickly get used to. However, it should be said there are a couple of places where the channel is too constricted to share. This is especially the case where the upbound and downbound channels are separated around Mich Island, which includes a narrow rock cut and the sailors' encampment. These are sections of the St. Mary's where AIS is greatly appreciated because you can have a forewarning about approaching traffic. If you're uncomfortable with a close quarters situation, remember that it's often possible to just pull over to the edge of the channel, maintain position, and wait until the freighter has safely passed. You should also know that it'll take some time for a freighter to pass you because in some river sections they have a mandated speed limit that are very close to the speed of a cruising boat. When you get to where the channel split around Mich Islands, you have to make a choice about which branch you want to use. As a recreational boater, you are bound by the traffic separation that rules in freighters. However, it's my strong recommendation that you follow the same up and downbound channels as required for the freighters. You really don't want to meet a freighter coming against you in one of the river's narrow spots. It's just not fun. The river's bend at Sailors' Encampment is such a spot. The channel here is quite close to both the Canadian and U.S. shores. It must have been a really challenging place to pass at times of the wooden schooners. I should mention that as we sailed north from Sailors' Encampment, we soon came to the split in the channel where, if you are not paying close attention, it's easy to go wrong. You want to follow the part of the channel leading to the west, which is a shipping channel, and not the easterly buoyed branch. That one will lead you astray. When we are past this section of the St. Mary's River, Vicky and I always feel that we are on a home stretch to the Soo, but we know from experience that we still have a way to go. We figured that it would be another 3 hours before we would finally reach Kemp Marina on the American side.
Well, we're now in the final stretches to Sault Ste. Marie, and we have one of the big freighters coming behind us. It's in Indiana Harbor, one of the really big lakers. So we'll just stay out to the starboard side here, to the by the red buoys, and stay out of its way, and hopefully it'll pass us quickly. It's a third freighter that we have met on this trip. It's not a big deal, but you just want to make sure that you have enough room for them to pass.
The 1,000-foot-long Indiana Harbor is definitely impressive when you are up close to it in a small yacht. Somebody may even say that the huge ship is quite intimidating, but it really didn't feel that way to us. Due to its slow speed, the Indiana Harbor hardly kicked up any wake. The freighter was moving only slightly faster than Freelance, so it took what seemed like forever to pass us. You just have to be patient. We weren't quite done with the freighters. Just 30 minutes later, the Canadian-flagged bulk carrier called the Algoma Discovery came downstream against us. It quickly went past us. More than anything else, this turned out to be a day of freighter spotting. That was a good thing. It's always fun to see the ships up close. Otherwise, this was just another steady and slight uphill climb against a moderate current in the St. Mary's River. As I said earlier, in some of its constricted channels, it can run more than 2 knots.
We are now in the last cut before we get into Sault Ste. Marie, and our speed on the paddle wheel says that we're going 6, but the speed over ground is less than 5. I can't quite see it from here, but it's like 4.8, 4.7. This is how strong the current is as you're coming into this last stretch. We've gone through it many times. It's what we expect.
Once out of the final cut, we looked across to the Canadian side of the Sault. It's the larger of the 2 border towns. We weren't going there this time. We would instead spend the next couple of days on the American side of the river before locking up the 23 feet to Lake Superior and then go west along the lake's infamous shipwreck coast to Grand Marais. Our timing would depend on getting a favorable weather window. We do like staying at the George Kemp Marina. It's a very well run and pleasant place to put in for a while. We expected that several of our Great Lakes Cruising Club friends were already here or would show up sometime during our stay. And we were right.
Thanks for watching this episode of Sailing SV Freelance from northern Lake Huron and the St. Mary's River. We hope you'll join us again for the next one, which will be on Lake Superior's shipwreck coast. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. It helps us a lot.